My first ever What If video, What If Sega Had a Smash Bros, was met with a lot of positive feedback, and a lot of guys seem to really be supportive of the series and want to see more of it. And I mean, more of it. Yeah, there are some things I feel I need to address. Now, this next bit won't necessarily pertain to this video specifically, but rather the entire series as a whole, so if you want to skip this bit, I don't blame you. Here's a timestamp to skip all this mumbo jumbo, but for those who are interested in what I have to say about these constructive criticisms, even the toxic ones, some of the very common ones is the idea that these theoretical games might flop. I won't deny the possibility. I honestly don't think Sega has really developed a fighting game crossover that's not either really old or really trash. I might want to do a future video on what makes a good Smash Bros, from its in-tune gameplay and its evolution throughout the games, and hopefully if these companies plan on making one, they will follow these examples and make a decent fighting game crossover of their own using their own IPs. But this series is mostly about making the roster itself. Honestly, the idea of what makes a good Smash Bros game will take forever to explain, so I'd rather separate that idea on a different video. Another set of comments I've seen is the lack of this character or that character or more characters to represent this specific series. Alright, I'll give you that one. If I do have free reign on the number of characters I can include, then yeah, I'd pretty much be making Smash Bros. Mugen with the levels of quantity. But I limited myself to 40 characters for part 1 of each video just to contain the numbers of characters I think are worth mentioning. Most of the characters I've seen mentioned were most likely planned on the video, but ultimately removed because of the 40 character limit. Here's how I come up with the character roster. I research the IPs of each company owns and pick the ones I believe to be the most popular. This is due to either sales figures, word of mouth, memorability, and how each company thinks about the IPs nowadays. Of course, I might have some bias when it comes to picking each character as well, I won't deny that. But I also look forward to what characters I might have missed out on, even if their fanbase can be a little too trigger happy. I might have misjudged certain series' popularity. For example, I didn't think there were so many Puyo fans out there and how so little Life is Strange fans out there. That's definitely Mabi. Hopefully this is where the new Ultimate series rectify that, as this should hopefully negate some of the mistakes I make, though I'm pretty sure even after this video there will be some characters I either forgot or should have deserved more love. Just to save myself the trouble for the future, I might want to do an assist trophy video as a part 3. I plan on maybe developing this after the What If Square Enix Had a Smash Bros. Ultimate video, and before you ask, yes, that's definitely going to be a thing coming soon as well. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that the way I'm organizing this list is by number, and if you guys happen to skip the introduction, welcome back guys. Considering how the Smash Bros. Character roster organizes everyone by number, I'd figure I should do the same. Imagine this as a somewhat rough sketch on character announcements and implementation. It's also a good indication on my own development on coming up with the characters as well. That's why I chose these 8 characters as the new starting roster, and it's prominently showcased in the thumbnail. With the exception of Pudding as an Echo Fighter of Ulala, these 8 characters will be the starting roster, and every character from there on, thanks to your guys' feedback, will be characters introduced throughout this fictitious fighting game. I should also mention why Vincent and Neptune are present way late in the numerical order. Originally, I kinda planned on removing these characters due to multiple reasons. One, they technically aren't made by Sega, and I made a mistake of researching certain IPs, or the other being they're just not as popular as I thought they would be. I mostly kept them because of the mentality of everyone is here that caused so much hype with Smash Bros. Ultimate marketing, and I don't necessarily think third-party characters are bad per se, as long as they relate towards Sega in some way, shape, or form. I think they can be portrayed in this fictitious fighting game, and yes, there will be some third-party characters that will show up. In fact, did you know Rio was a third-party character by technicality? Shenmue 3 is not being published by Sega for some reason, it's published by Deep Silver, so if I remove all third-party characters, then it's not just Neptune that's out, but also Rio and the Vocaloids. Also, you may have noticed that there are some characters that are actually early in the character roster as well. Think of these as either Echo Fighters of certain characters, or some time travel shenanigans. Imagine some of these characters as characters that really should have been in part 1. I will be going from each character in order. I may skip some characters that are already introduced in the previous video, but there's a chance that I may have to expand the idea of certain characters that I may have overlooked at. And with that, let's dive right into the new character roster, as they consist of Sonic, Axel Stone, Knights. Knights was originally an unlockable character on the first game, but now is promoted to default character. I believe this character is iconic enough within Sega's IP to be prominently shown to be a starter. Reala. Okay, so originally I thought to make this character more of an alternate costume due to the fact that he was implemented late during the development of this video. But that is until I found some gameplay footage and the design of this character, and holy crap, this looks badass. So I've upgraded him to Echo Fighter at the cost of one of the characters I originally intended. More information on that at the end of the video.
Tails!
Originally in the second game, Tails would fit in more as the Luigi of Sega Smash Bros, being the second character introduced in the Sonic universe. As for the moveset, originally I've questioned whether or not he'll fight on foot or fight on a mech. I decided that he should fight on foot, as the reason for that is going to be mentioned later in the video.
Alex Kidd. Blaze.
It makes a lot of sense for Blaze to be the second character represented in Streets of Rage series, since Mario isn't the only series that has more than one representation in 64. Pokemon also has more than one representation as well, so think of Blaze as the Jigglypuff of the game. She'll be her own unique character with different punches and kick animations, and much like her name, I want her to emit fire effects at the end of her attacks. Couldn't find any gameplay footage of her actually emitting fire on her attacks, but it's a good way to distinguish her between Axel. To save on some moveset building, she'll copy some of Axel's attacks, but overall, I think she'll be more of a semi-Echo, kinda like the difference between Fox and Falco, or even loosely, Samus and Captain Falcon in Smash Bros. 64.
Honey. BD Joe.
A lot of you mentioned that BD Joe's moveset could be entirely unique since Captain Falcon himself is mostly inside his car, but never outside of it, before Smash Bros. Of course. So that's how I'm going to design him. His taxi car will be a final Smash, but otherwise he'll have his own goofy playstyle, punching and kicking with more crazy style. Maybe body slamming or tripping to match his crazy taxi persona. He'll definitely have a lot more interesting ideas to make a playable character.
Knuckles. Dr. Eggman.
The lack of villains in the first part is definitely a missed opportunity, so without a doubt, Dr. Eggman has to be the first villain in order. Tails is not the only character in Sonic Adventure 2 to use a mech to fight. Eggman can perfectly fit in as kinda like the Bowser Jr. of the group. He'll drive mostly in a walking mech, shoot a various of projectiles and lasers, and recover with his jet boosters, with his final smash letting him pilot more bigger mechs.
I. Mimi.
Mimi will add more towards the Super Monkey Ball representation, but due to how similar she is to I, she'll be an Echo Fighter. Now, I don't think there's an exact difference in terms of properties or fighting style between the two characters, so much like Richter and Daisy, Mimi will play exactly the same as I, with some different taunts and victory animations.
Yum. Shadow.
Shadow has been promoted from an Echo Fighter of Sonic to his own character. Some attack animations may be borrowed. For example, I think he'll share the same homing attack and aerial attacks and even have the same final smash, becoming Super Shadow. But overall, he'll have newer movesets, being able to teleport with his recovery, utilizing a bunch of chaos abilities that a lot of you guys bombard me with.
Segata Sanshiro. James. Gary. Jackie Bryant.
Virtua Fighter is a fighting game, so having only one character being represented in said fighting game would be preposterous, so Jackie Bryant will be joining in pretty early on. He'll fight similar to how he fights in his own games, using the Jeet Kune Do style.
Amigo. Sho Amabane. Tillis.
Tillis will be an Echo Fighter of Sho, but she'll be slightly different, being a faster but less powerful version of him.
Kiryu. Sarah Bryant.
Of course, Akira and Jackie won't be the only character in the Virtua Fighter universe. I think Jackie's sister Sarah will be a fine choice as well. She may share some fighting animations alongside her brother, but while she does utilize her own Jeet Kune Do style, she's more of a mixed martial arts master, so she'll be her own character. Much like how Isabella is considered her own fighter compared to Villager.
Jock.
So I only stopped at Jack just to make a quick correction. While he does utilize a lot of wrestling techniques, he also has a chainsaw. I don't know why I didn't mention this beforehand in part 1, but this would obviously add a lot more to his moveset.
Selvaria. Kagami, Rin, and Len.
I actually thought of a somewhat better moveset for these two twins. I've described these two characters in the past to be similar to Ice Climbers. However, I'm going to amend that and say that both of these characters are going to be connected in some way. Both will attack at the same time, both will die at the same time, and there's no way to separate them. So an accurate representation would be something more of lines of Duck Hunt rather than Ice Climbers. And with that, I think that should cover most of the veterans character, with the exception of these two. The rest should be brand new characters for this video, so prepare yourself for some long-winded explanations.
Amatai.
I mentioned Puyo beforehand, but just to recap, I'm really surprised by the popularity of the series, so I'll add one of the more popular characters, Amatai. Now, I don't really play this game, so I can't say for certain what her movesets would be. Maybe using Puyo's as an extended projectiles, or having a randomized Puyo color and matching them to cause an explosion, or more attack buffers. I do think her fighting style would be creative, but like I said, I'm having a tough time trying to figure out exactly what she'll do.
Ristar.
And here we have Ristar, a classic SEGA character back in the SEGA Genesis era. He has stretchable arms, so despite his size, I think he'll be a pseudo-grappler. Imagine him with Belmont's whip, as the whip represents his arms, as they can grab the opponents. That's a little too OP, so to nerf him, we'll make him one of the lighter and slower characters.
Vectorman.
Another classic SEGA Genesis representative, Vectorman has a lot of polygonal spheres on his arteries that can somewhat stretch, so I'd like to think of his punches and kicks as extensions. Otherwise, I see him shooting a lot of white balls on his opponents, so that can be used as basic projectiles, with his jet boosters being his recovery.
Bonanza Brothers.
Here comes our duo. The Kagami Twins won't be the only characters to fight as one, however, I think these characters will be a proper Ice Climbers clone. The Bonanza brothers will have a delay on the second player attacks. I'd like to state that Robo will be the main character, so if he dies, both of them dies, whereas if Mobo dies, Robo can still fight. Both characters are also different height as well, which adds difficulty to killing Mobo, but he will also be lighter too, so both of these characters won't be exactly the same. I did originally have the idea to separate these two characters and have Mobo be an Echo Robo, but I think them being together is a well-deserved representation than them being separate.
Amy.
Adding to the Sonic the Hedgehog representation, Amy would somewhat fill into the Princess Peach of the series. She has a hammer that she could swing, so I'm sure most of her moveset speaks for herself. I'm also not too certain about this idea, but I think she might also have a triple jump thanks to her Sonic Boom incarnation. I know people like to give this game some shit, myself included, but out of every character, this is probably her best incarnation. At best, her outfit and Boom would make more of a decent alternate costume.
Max.
I think someone from the Shining Force deserves some representation, so out of everyone, I decided to go for the safe route and pick the first main character in the first game. He has a sword and can conjure up magic spells, pretty standard fighter, but one that still warrants in SEGA's All-Star. Also, I kinda hate to put in a flaw for this 80 character roster already, but I made the roster before recording footage for this game, and I fucked up. I accidentally recorded 3 hours of footage because of how invested I am with this game, and I only have one character represented in the series? While the game plays a lot more like Fire Emblem with its tactical RPG, let's just sweep this flaw under the rug and say Max will be the Shulk of the series, one that only has one character with the potential of more. I'm only mentioning this because I know I'll get a lot of comments saying that I should add more Shining Force characters, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's just I didn't realize how good this game was until after I recorded the game.
Centaurian.
Alright, real quick, I don't know what this dude's actual name is. I've seen him referred to as just Centaurian or Altered Beast, but I don't know if he actually has an official name. So for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna refer to him as Centaurian. Centaurian is in Sega's classic arcade game Altered Beast, where you play as a man that can punch and kick in this auto-scroller. He'll have a super meter similar to Little Mac and Cloud, and when it reaches max, he'll automatically turn into Altered Beast, granting him more moves, more power, super armor, and a projectile for a limited time. As for his final smash, he'll actually have two, one for his human form and another for his beast form. Both will do a different cinematic flurry of attacks, however doing so in his beast form will grant him more damage and knockback.
Rolf.
I've debated on whether or not Rolf could be an Echo Fighter of Alice, since both of these characters' stats are somewhat similar, both utilizing a sword and both also having all-around stats in their games. But I personally feel I should make these characters separate, but similar enough so that they can act as a semi-Echo, much like how Mario is to Luigi, or Villager is to Isabelle, or Fire Emblem.
Majima.
Alright, so by the time I made the first video, I didn't play any of the Yakuza games, so I went for the safe route and just included Kiryu in the game. But now that I played Yakuza 0, holy crap, how did I not include Majima? His attacks are much more expressive, a lot more silly, and even has two weapons using a knife and a baseball bat. He can also breakdance too, so that's a total of 6 dancing characters in this roster so far. So yeah, Majima definitely deserves to be a character in this game's roster.
Joe Musashi.
Shinobi by definition is a ninja, and ninjas tend to be stealthy and quiet when eliminating their foes. Joe Musashi is none of that. He's a non-stop killing machine in the same veins of Ryu Hayabusa. So we're gonna dazzle him with more expressive sword choreography, making him super fast and combo oriented, and we'll give him some shurikens as projectiles. I also want him to have a dive kick, because dive kicks in fighting games are automatically awesome. For his final smash, I think it'll be a flurry of attacks that you can control, possibly even damage multiple people in the process, ending with a badass sword sheath, exploding any opponents in the way. Definitely a lot more Michael Bay, I will admit, but at the same time, what kind of ninja wears bright white? Yeah, we're gonna go full-blown anarchy with this character.
Combo.
With a bigger hitbox and more raw power at the price of speed, I think Combo would work well as a third semi-clone of Beat and Gum, where Beat is overall average and Gum is a lot more vulnerable but fast. Combo, ironic to his name, won't be combo-oriented. He'll be a slower but stronger version of the other two Jet Set Radio characters, and yes, I do know I separated these characters, but I think from their character design and stats, they can be declonified from one another. Plus, Combo has a boombox, and I think they could add somewhat of a shockwave attacks, or, I don't know, just pummel his opponents with it. Now, there were a lot of Jet Set Radio characters to choose from, I realize, and Combo isn't really the character you play by default. But he's generally one of the first characters you unlock, and out of the entire cast, I honestly think he looks the most unique out of everyone. I think Combo serves as a good middle ground between the defaults and the unlockables.
Pai-chan.
For our last Virtual Fighter representative, we got Pai-chan, a Chinese Mi-Zung Quan martial artist who's pretty popular among the Virtual Fighter series. She has a completely different fighting style, so of course she'll have her own different moveset.
Bun.
Speaking of fighting games, I can't forget about the Fighting Viper series. For a fighting game to only represent one character in a crossover would be too lonely for Honey/Candy, so I went with the second most popular character and the unofficial main character for the game, Bun. He will be a close-up and powerful heavy character, utilizing raw strength to knock out his opponents. I do think this may give him somewhat of a clear weakness against keep-away characters, so to counter that slightly, while his regular speed will be slow, his attacks will certainly be not. The best way I could describe his playstyle is think of Godot from Street Fighter 4, having slow movement when walking, but super fast attacks covering a lot of distance.
I guess.
I mentioned including Aegis briefly during the first video, but now it's her time to shine in this new update. In the opposite spectrum of Bond, she will be a keep-away character, but she has a limited amount of ammo she can utilize with no way to refuel or reload until she loses a stock. Don't worry guys, it's not as nerve-breaking as you may think it is. She'll still be able to use her persona Athena for more devastating attacks. Now I did mention including other main characters from the Persona series, but I decided against that because Yu Narukami. I kind of feel like they would play somewhat similarly to him since they all use a sword, and I don't feel comfortable showcasing more sword users in the Persona series. Wait a minute, what are you talking about? Maya doesn't use a sword, why aren't you including her?
Harley.
Another popular character within the Puyo series. While she'll somewhat be a semi-clone of Amatai, I think it'll be more interesting if we give her more movesets from her first appearance in a video game, using different magic abilities to attack or enhance her moveset.
Rodon.
From Assist Trophy in Smash Bros. Ultimate and into playable character, Rodon will add another representation to the Bayonetta series. He'll play somewhat similar to Bayonetta, but I do want him to have his own unique moveset. While some animations may be shared, he'll have different attacks making him more of a semi-clone, but not full-blown Echo Fighter.
Sam Gideon.
Onward for more Platinum Games representation, Sam Gideon from the Vanquish game would add more towards Platinum's roster in the SEGA All-Stars Brawler. He can parkour, shoot his guns, melee attack. I think his design speaks for itself.
Oppa.
Here we have Oppa, a character that I could barely get because of this stupid claw machine. God damn it! Oh yeah, he's also in this game called Fantasy Zone. He can shoot and bomb his opponents, so that will act as his basic projectiles. Otherwise, he doesn't seem to have much of a moveset, so most of his attacks will consist of bashing his opponent with his body and legs. Also, to take some things off of Mega Man's death animation, every time he loses a stock, he will play this death animation. It's just a neat Easter egg that I'd like to include.
Derek Styles.
Adding to the more niche Atlas titles, Derek Styles would bring more creativity to the battlefield. He's definitely one of the WTF characters in the game, being that what he does during surgery could function as attacks. He can apply sutures, cut enemies with a scalpel, and for his final smash, it can be his healing touch, slowing down time, and when dealing enough damage, he can successfully finish the operation, and by finish, I mean kill them. This is definitely a weird character to implement. The goal of his game is to save the patient, not kill them. Still, I think he would be an interesting implementation.
Hayashi.
A character that's not afraid of killing, on the other hand, is Captain Hayashi, the bad guy of Jet Set Radio Future. Now, in the game he mostly uses a gun, but in beta models he was supposed to have a sword as well. I think it'll be pretty fun if we bring that up to his moveset as well, giving him a combination of the two weapons.
Aika.
Vice won't be the only character to represent Skies of Arcadia. Aika will be joining alongside him in battle as well. She has a very unique boomerang weapon, so I think she would be a creative fighter. Due to the shape of the boomerang, the hitboxes can be pretty tricky to decipher. Realistically, the impact of the boomerang should be the hitbox, but to make it easier for development, this square will be the hitbox. She also has a very aggressive fighting style, being able to rush in opponents while also keeping a good distance. This might be overpowered, so as a nerf she'll have one of the weakest recoveries. I like to imagine her as somewhat of an aerial Little Mac, or I guess exactly like Chrome.
Jack Frost.
This wasn't a character I initially intended, since I kind of assumed since Jack Frost is a persona, rather than a persona user, he wouldn't fit as well as a playable character. But with so many requests, I recognize how popular he is, so I'd say he deserves a spot as a fighter. He'll use ice abilities and freeze the opponents he faces. Furthermore, you may have noticed he also has a different symbol compared to the Persona characters. Simply put, I want him to represent the Shin Megami Tensei universe. Hey, Mario, Donkey Kong, Wario, and Yoshi have different symbols. I don't think separating these two would change that much.
Grace.
I just want to squeeze one last fighter to represent the Fighting Viper series. Grace will simply fight how she fights in the game. Powerful and slow.
Black Baron.
In comes the main bad guy of the MadWorld series and a returning fighter in Anarchy Reigns. Black Baron is fierce and powerful. He has two gigantic fists that can pulverize anyone who stands in his way. While his default costume takes his Anarchy Reigns model, dubbed the Blacker Baron, I am not making this shit up, that is literally his name, he'll still have an alternate costume dedicated to his MadWorld counterpart, much like Jack.
Vincent. Neptune. Maya Amano.
Okay, yeah, this is kind of the reason I stopped abruptly during the Ida section. For our final Persona representative, Maya is in the game after all. Using her Persona, Maya, she would utilize more light spells and borrow some of Jack Frost's ice attacks to deal damage, and with her trusty double pistol, she would shoot around the battlefield as well.
Chaos.
Here we have our last Sonic representative. I believe out of all the minor role villains showcased within the Sonic universe, Chaos would bring more of a diverse moveset. Of course, becoming Perfect Chaos to deal massive amounts of damage and destroy opponents would be an obvious final smash, but he has so much potential for a vibrant moveset since he can change his model at will by turning into a puddle, or changing into his different chaotic forms. I know there are a lot of other Sonic representatives that might be suited, like Metal Sonic, Silver the Hedgehog, or Big the Cat, but trust me when I say it was difficult trying to pick a Sonic representative without over-exemplifying the cast, and even then, I sort of feel like I might have showcased way too many Sonic characters compared to the other series. I do believe that out of all of them though, Chaos would be a, no pun intended, perfect fit.
Siren.
Adding more to the villainous roles within Sega's franchises, Siren has a more menacing looking design and can utilize a lot of things that robots can use. I'm giving a lot of creative liberties here, so just have him shoot a lot of lasers, projectiles, and maybe add some super armor effect thanks to his exterior design.
Orta.
Aside from BD Joe, Orta will be another character that has an original moveset made up for this fighting game. The Panzer Dragoon series has the player fighting in this Star Fox-like on-rail shooter, so to make it easier, Orta's moveset will be entirely made up, having her fight in a close-range combat while also wielding a blaster.
Masked Lumen.
Adding more villainous representation, we got the Masked Lumen. This Masked Lumen Sage will utilize his staff for extended hitbox and flashy combos. Pretty simple and basic if you ask me.
Echo.
You may be wondering how Echo the Dolphin would fight in the battlefield since he's mostly seen underwater when he fights. Well, thanks to a certain fighting game called Rivals of Aether, there is a character named Orcane who is an orca that can fight in land and utilize his puddle for him to attack and recover. Echo the Dolphin will play pretty much like Orcane, with puddle sprouts representing areas Echo can utilize to jump into the air or dish out damage or recover, and utilizing charge attacks as, well, his charge attacks. His sonar in-game functions more as a means of communication. Yeah, screw that, that's gonna be his projectile.
Gemini.
Gemini Sunrise is a cowgirl not just with a revolver but a sword as well. She'll have her own unique moveset and fight as a standard sword/gun wielder. I'd say she's one of the more beginner-friendly characters out there.
ToeJam and Earl.
Our last third-party representative, and yes, I did say third-party as they are no longer owned by SEGA. They're now owned by Human Nature Studios, aka the original creators of ToeJam and Earl, and thank God they're the IP owners because the company before this one was owned by EA. Yeah, that would be very difficult to bargain if I want these two characters in Sega Smash Bros. Since their history with Sega being originally published under their company during the Sega Genesis era, I think they deserve a spot as playable fighters. Once again, they'll play somewhat of a Duck Hunt duo type of character. They'll attack together, recover together, however if one dies, the other dies too. Now this isn't exactly how the game works as these two characters are clearly separate characters, but I just couldn't imagine having an Ice Climbers-like moveset, so I made them one singular character instead.
Flicky!
For our final character spot, we got the Piranha Plant of the game, Flicky. He did originate from the Sega arcade days, but you may know him more as Amy's pet in Sonic Adventure 1. Why did I pick him over every other character in any Sega game? Just as a joke. that really is it. It's just to piss off any salty fans who wanted a specific character. Trust me, he may not be the fighter we wanted, but he's certainly a fighter we deserve. But just because he may be implemented as a joke character, that doesn't mean there won't be a good moveset for him. Flicky can fly with his wings, but he'll also be able to utilize his little yellow birds dubbed the Chirps to either fight alongside him or protect him. Basically Olimar, except instead of plucking all of them at will, they'll pretty much spawn at random times with a maximum of 5 at a time. The more Chirps he has, the more powerful he gets, and without those yellow birds, he'll be pretty weak. He can also use various projectiles, and much like Jack Frost, he'll also represent his own universe as well. And that is the entire projected roster of Sega Smash Bros. Ultimate, if it exists. Now, going into the character in this style while faithful towards the Ultimate Character Select screen, feels a little bit unorganized, so as a countermeasure, BAM! Here's what the character looks like if we were to follow through 64 through Brawl's era of CSS organization. Every character is organized by roster, with Echo Fighters being next to their original characters. Just for fun, I've also made this as well. This is the CSS if it's organized by the date they originally showed up at, with the oldest being Flicky being released in 1984, and Joker from Persona 5 being released in 2016 in Japan. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys liked this video, I mentioned previously that I plan on doing a Square Enix Ultimate, so that's definitely in the works. I've made a roster already, so here's a 10-second sneak preview. This is in fact organized by franchise, so there are some hints out there that some of you guys might notice. As for Microsoft, well, I got some good news and bad news. Let's start with the bad news first. I don't think I'll be making an ultimate version of their roster. I've certainly done a thumbnail, but good god, I've already had trouble making the roster from the first video, so I really think it'll be challenging to try and make a sequel. But the good news is, I lied. If you know me, I never back down from a challenge. Last thing I need to mention are the cut characters during the development of this episode. I think you guys have the right to see behind the scenes what characters I considered or removed and why they didn't make the cut. In order to get a better explanation, these were the characters I added in the last minute, mostly because I think they would make the roster look a lot more interesting and vibrant. Now that I got that out of the way, these were the characters I removed in replacement of these two. As for a rapid-fire reason as to why I removed them, Adam was the least popular out of the 3 original characters, and he wasn't even in the trailer for Streets of Rage 4, so I scrapped him. As for Claude Wallace, it was actually kind of a toss-up between him, Mimi, and Tillis, so I just spin the wheel and kinda let luck decide, because honestly, any of these 3 could have probably been removed during development. I've seen a lot of comments pointing into Mario's inclusion since it'd be cool to see Mario alongside Sonic since they fit in very well, but here's the thing. He's a Nintendo character, and this game, realistically done, would most likely be multi-platform, so Mario will be a Switch exclusive. I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal. The Switch version of Starlink had Fox and Cloud, and to my knowledge, that's the only thing implemented in terms of console exclusivity. But I felt that it would be more fair that if I included a Nintendo rep, I needed to include a Microsoft and Sony representation as well. For Microsoft, I've considered Banjo-Kazooie since Sonic and the duo interacted with each other in the racing games, and both of their characters fit in very nicely within the same universe. As for Sony, I've considered... Apparently there's not a single Sony character that screams Sega for me. Yeah, this is why I didn't include these two. I just couldn't find a good Sony representative that would be alongside SEGA. I mean, I guess I can just include a random Sony property. The two best characters I could really think of is Sly Cooper or Sackboy, but again, they just don't scream SEGA All-Star for me. If you guys have any questions, comments, and feedback, leave them down below in the comment section below, and as always, thanks for watching.